Bubba.
Where am I going? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Hello, hello. So glad to see you here at St. James Cathedral. My name is Robbie Ellis. I'm here from Classical Music Chicago. Welcome to the pre-concert talk for this Rush Hour concert. And we are collaborating with two different organizations for this particular concert, the FilAm Foundation and JCC Chicago Violins of Hope. The concert will start at 5:45. We're going to do a brief talk about the music and about the organizations that we're collaborating with today. So I'm going to introduce some guests. Immediately to my right is Matt Charnay. He is the Education Program Director, something, you can clarify your title later, it's fine, of JCC Chicago. JCC technically stands for Jewish Community Centers, but it's one of those organizations that abbreviates its name so often that we forget what it stands for, kind of like KFC. Next to Matt is Marian Mayuga. She is a violinist originally from Quezon City in the Philippines, now living here, a member of Civic Orchestra Chicago. And then with the talkie stick is Magnus Villanueva, a pianist and Chicago native, if I'm not mistaken. You grew up here? What sort of music programs did you do growing up here?
I've been everywhere. MYA, Merit School of Music, Music Institute, did the whole thing around here. Chamber music, orchestra, everything.
So you grew up in the area. Did you go to college in Chicago as well?
No, I actually went to school in Baltimore at the Peabody Conservatory.
Great, and you're back here making a career of things?
So actually, I am currently living in New York City.
Oh.
So
okay.
just kind of in and out of Chicago. It's, I have a ton of family here. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, you might be in a position to shed a little bit of light on what the FilAm Foundation is. Victor Santiago Asuncion founded it. He has played in this concert series plenty, but beyond that, do you want to say anything else about FilAm?
Sure, yeah. I mean, Victor is doing a wonderful job with, bringing together all these Filipino-American musicians and Filipino musicians that are based in the U.S. They're programming beautiful concerts. I went to a couple at Carnegie Hall in New York where I actually met Victor. This is my first time actually playing with the foundation, and it's really an honor to be here in Chicago, my hometown, and do it.
Was it a part of, I can't remember when he founded it, was it around when you were coming up as a high schooler, pre-college student?
I'm not 100% sure. I've only been kind of affiliated for the past couple of years. I think it's quite a new foundation, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll turn now to Marianne. You did not grow up just a few miles from here. You grew up considerably further away. Yeah.
Yes.
So how about you give some of your story and how you came to live in Chicago?
Yeah, so I moved here in 2017 to study at DePaul University for my master's in violin performance. But before then, I did my undergrad in the Philippines at the University of the Philippines.
Was it a particular challenge to come to the States to study?
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
because it's not just an issue of learning, getting used to a new language, but also learning about the culture and also the differences in how people value music,
What are some of those differences between the Philippines and the States?
Well, definitely I would say, in particular in Chicago, there's a very vibrant art scene. So I would say that it's really fulfilling to be a musician here, because a really difficult struggle we have in the Philippines is the economy. So it's really hard to pursue the arts there. So I'm really thankful to be here.
Great. And are there people who have given you scholarships that you particularly want to thank, or you're getting by with scholarships, finding work, that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. At DePaul, I was thankfully granted what was it called? A performance award when I entered. And then also it's a huge help to my sister, if she's listening to this broadcast, who really supported me because she came here before me as a doctor. So having a family member to support you here when you move is a huge deal. And also when I studied again after DePaul, having assistantships, and then later on knowing Victor for these performance opportunities is what helps forward my career, you know.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk to Matt now. This is a bit of an unusual concert because, if I'm not mistaken, the 4 string players are playing on instruments that they don't normally play. And of course, Magnus, you're playing on an instrument you don't normally, but it's part of the job that you swap instruments every day. But string players, it's a little less usual. So tell us about Violins of Hope.
True. We're so thankful that these musicians are so talented they can play on any instrument that we give them. So thank you so much for your talent already. JCC has brought to Chicago and really Illinois in general Violins of Hope from April all the way through September. It's a collection of 70 or over 70 different instruments, most of them violins, but today we actually have a viola and a cello with us as well. And all of the instruments in Violins of Hope were somehow rescued or are Holocaust era violins. So were made around the time of or were owned by families who unfortunately were perished in the Holocaust, but everything has a story around it was saved or somehow rescued from the Holocaust in a way.
The 4 instruments that we're going to hear in today's concert, do you know any of the stories behind any of the individual instruments that we're going to hear today?
I do have a little bit of the story behind a few of the violins. We actually have, like I said, a viola and a cello, which I don't know a lot, but we do know a little bit. Is it okay if I bring out a little bit of information and read it?
You go ahead, yeah.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah. And by the way, after the concert is done, you will be able to come up on stage here, stage, altar, and take a look at the instruments, see these very particular Holocaust-era instruments, and we'll find a little bit more about the story of one of the violins.
And that's really what it's all about, is making sure that you're able to come and engage and see the instruments. So we have 2 amazing violins with us. One was created by Yakov Zimmerman, one of the first Jewish violin makers in Warsaw. He was a wealthy industrialist and who ordered a violin made by Zimmerman. Zimmerman made an amazing string instrument with a very amazing Jewish star inlaid in the back, and once we're done, you can come up and actually see the inlay in the back. When the war broke out in 1939, Shimon, who was the owner of the violin at the time, managed to escape all the way to Uzbekistan, but unfortunately died a few years later. One of the family members later brought that violin back to Jerusalem to its original shop maker where they originally made it. They refurbished it, and it is now part of this amazing collection that we have today.
So you're saying the violin maker was in Warsaw, in the thriving Jewish community of Warsaw prior to 1939, and then that same violin maker got out and reestablished in Israel and was reunited with the instrument he'd made.
Exactly.
Wow.
There's a lot of interesting, amazing stories with Violins of Hope like that, where we see kind of one go off, and 100 years later it kind of comes back. It's been really interesting to see.
That is a fascinating one. So as I said, after the concert is done, you'll be able to see these instruments, including, we are in an Anglican cathedral, but yes, the Star of David inlaid into the back of the violin, if I'm not mistaken. Well, we have a little bit of time to talk about the music. Marian, I'll go back to you. We'll talk briefly about the 3 pieces that are going to be on the program. So first is Arnold Schoenberg, and I know that name can be frightening to some people who are used to his later stuff, but this is an early work of his, and you wouldn't pick it to be Schoenberg necessarily.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's actually very tonal, and Schoenberg actually credits Mozart in how he learned a lot of his compositional techniques. And actually, in this particular string quartet, you would hear a lot of influences of not just Mozart, but also Brahms. And it's interesting because this work was actually brought to Brahms for approval, but it was published posthumously. And it's really interesting because Schoenberg spent a lot of time working on this and feeling really fulfilled about the output. But it's really interesting in hindsight to see the kind of voice he had there and how he later on changed his voice in the compositions we know better.
He very much was an advocate of tradition, that Austro-German tradition of music that passed down from Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, Schumann, Brahms, all of that. And I think he once said, there is still plenty of good music yet to be written in C major, despite his atonal leanings later on. Although this one's in A, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that movement. And then after that, Florence Price's movement, Florence Price's music. Magnus, as a fellow Chicagoan, maybe you can speak to this one. I'm guessing by now you've probably played a bit of Florence Price's music here and there?
So funny enough, this is actually the first piece by Florence Price that I've been able to dive into and perform, and it's really, really an amazing piece. It's very short in 3 movements, almost kind of like a collage is what it reminds me of. The harmony isn't necessarily what you would expect from like traditional harmony. The chords shift from different major keys almost kind of out of nowhere, which is really interesting. The second movement in particular has a very much sort of kind of spiritual kind of tone.
That
very
Florence
beautiful,
Price
yes.
signature, yeah.
Yeah, and then the third movement is just a fun 3/8, kind of light piece. Yeah. So yeah.
If you haven't heard of Florence Price by now, and I mean, I know that not everybody in this room is going to be from Chicago, but yeah, if you haven't heard of Florence Price, she was from Arkansas originally, lived and worked on the south side of Chicago in Bronzeville, very prominent black musician, composer, had a piece played by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra in the 1930s, which the CSO brags about all the time. And then, yeah, just great music, very much influenced by the black church in a lot of ways. And finally, Ottorino Respighi, who's famous for his very bombastic Benito Mussolini adjacent orchestral tone poems. Just like the Schoenberg that we're going to hear, another piece that was written when the composer was quite young, piano quartet. Are there any moments of the Respighi, for both of you, that you'd like us to listen out for?
So funny enough, Marian, when you mentioned Brahms' influence on Schoenberg, I really see that in this quintet as well. It's in the same key, in F minor, and has a lot of very kind of tremolo action in the piano, lots of arpeggios, very, very kind of late romantic sort of music. It's a very, very beautiful piece.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how even though it comes in 3 movements, the first movement is almost, the length of both the second and third movements or longer. And it's a monumental first movement, but even in its thematic material, it has really long lines and lush harmonies, which I really think, really brings out how the contrast between the strings and the piano can have this really good interaction and have this really meaningful and harmonic, structure.
Fantastic. So it's a great range of music that we're going to hear today. Schoenberg, Price, and Respighi. Before I finish up, I'd just like to let you know about a couple of other Classical Music Chicago events coming up. Tomorrow's Dame Myra Hess Memorial Concert, which is at the 17th Church of Christ Scientist, the crazy round whitish building on Wacker Drive, has Monpo Lee and Anna Hahn playing cello and piano, Alfred Schnittke's Suite in the Old Style, Igor Stravinsky's Suite Italienne, which is music from his ballet Pulcinella, always appealing, and Sulkhan Tsintsadze, a Georgian composer, his 5 pieces on Georgian folk themes. That's the hidden gem of this concert. That's at 12:15 tomorrow. You can go in person or you can listen live on WFMT. And then next week right here is the finale of this summer's Rush Hour concerts. Trio Diorama will play music by Bungani Ndondana Breen and Felix Mendelssohn. So come back here. 5:45 for the concert, 5:15 for the pre-concert talk. Please join me in thanking Matt Charnay, Marian Mayuga, and Magnus Villanueva. There we go. I can take the mic back as well. Hello and welcome to this Rush Hour concert. I'm Robbie Ellis. Rush Hour concerts are presented by Classical Music Chicago and supported in part by an award from the Illinois Arts Council Agency. Rush Hour concerts are produced in partnership with St. James Cathedral. Today's concert is a collaboration with the FilAm Foundation and JCC Chicago's Violins of Hope, and I'd like to introduce Matt Charnay from JCC Chicago to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you so much. On behalf of JCC Chicago, welcome to our Violins of Hope presentation. JCC Chicago, founded in 1903, is rooted in Jewish values, offers a life-affirming journey fostering a connection of community from birth all the way through senior years. It's JCC's Chicago's mission to strengthen the Jewish community from generation to generation, Lador Vador. Bringing Violins of Hope to communities around the state of Illinois reinforces our agency's role in fighting anti-Semitism and leaving the world a better place for our future generations. Violins of Hope is a collection of more than 70 string instruments, including cello and viola, which were played by Jewish musicians before and during the Holocaust. They have been painstakingly restored by Moshe, Amnon, and Avshalom Weinstein from Tel Aviv, Israel, and are now traveling around the state of Illinois for cultural exhibitions, for performances, and community education with the message of hope, resilience, and unity. Thank you so much for joining us today. Enjoy.
And after the concert, you are invited to come to the stage where you can see these particular special instruments up close. And now to perform the music of Schoenberg, Price, and Respighi, please welcome violinists Marian Mayuga and Brent Taghap, violist Larissa Mapua, and cellist Ezra Escobar.